Hey, I'm Robert Smith, and I guess welcome to Study Hall 18 and 21. Study Hall 18 and 21. It's kind of for adults, just kind of going over comparison biblical homework with, let's try to be scientifically accurate. Okay, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. Okay. So I'm going to go back over what I talked about the other day, but I'm going to try to use less braggy, less aggressive. Not. I'm going to try to not be an asshole. I'm going to try not to be an asshole. Because, it was kind of asshole-ish. Alright. Okay. So basically, we're going to just go over. I'm going to try to generalize this so it's not so much to take in. The overall message or the Bible code that we should probably get from the story and the overall parable there's more information than what I'm going to talk about in this short little message, but I'm just going to go over some highlights of the Bible so we can try to understand the information a little better, so we're not out there just having shit fights. Okay, because we're not supposed to be throwing shit. Throwing mud sounds better. We're not supposed to be throwing it. Okay. Alright, we're going to start in the beginning, Genesis. Okay? And Genesis is probably going to be the only book we'll really touch in the Old Testament. And then we're going to go to the New Testament. Okay. But Genesis is where you'll find the story of Adam and Eve. And God made them perfect. They were the crowning authority of the world in the Garden of Eden. And God took off for his business. And Adam and Eve ate from the fruit of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. And when God came back, they were all like, "Oh, my clothes are missing." So God had to kill an animal and clothe them, and then put them in the wild outside of the garden. Because, they were wild at that point. They've had the fruit of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, and it messes with their programming. And they got to be outside the garden after that. No, they're not supercomputers, but they're kind of biological supercomputers. We're talking about us, my species. Adam and Eve, the first man, and, woman, which is the first man. Okay, so we'll leave off the story with Adam and Eve eating the fruit and getting kicked out of the garden, put in the wild. Okay, they're put in the wild. Got thorns and thistles, and everything's difficult to live with, and you just can't get by. They're living in the wild. And now we're gonna jump. We're just gonna estimate. Okay, we're gonna jump. Biologically speaking, not carbon dating speaking, but biologically speaking, we're gonna jump from Adam and Eve about 6,000 years, 7,000 years. Okay, from Adam and Eve in the garden, biologically speaking, we're going to jump about 8,000 years. It's debatable and what the real timing is of, the Garden of Eden and all that is, they fight about it. But biologically speaking, I'm going to guess around 6 to 8, 1,000 years. That's, not carbon dating, but biological years of man. Okay. Yeah, we're not going back to the beginning of all infinite worlds. We're not going back to that Garden of Eden. That's right, there's different topics in the way you look at this stuff. So we're only going forward about 6 to 8,000 years to day 0 of our calendar. That's where we're headed. Day 0 of our calendar. Jesus is around 30 years old and he's preaching. Okay. He's talking about the Word. He's talking about God. He's talking about forgiveness. He's talking about all of it. Okay, so we're going to talk about John 1:1. John is one of Jesus' disciples, and the first verse in the book of John is John 1:1. It has a really strong statement in it that I'd like to look at, and it says, in the beginning, God was the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Okay, that's a really strong statement. And, well, you're just going to have to understand that, the Word would be God because God would be speaking the Word. So it's coming directly from God, so it would be God because it's a part of God because it came from God. And that's a lot to take in, and I'll have to find the verses that'll explain that in a better way. But basically, the Word is coming from God, so therefore it is God. But it's also stating that the Word was God and the Word was with God, which is, the Word was accurate. It was truthful. It was correct because it was with God. Okay. And we're still in John, and I'm just going to glance over 3:16 and keep moving. John 3:16 and keep moving. Okay, because that's where God officially asks you to believe in Christ and become a Christian. It's John 3:16. If you believe in Him, this is what you'll be looking at. And we're going to go on to Corinthians 11. Now, we're looking for the Last Supper here. I don't have the exact verse. For one, you need to be doing your homework. And for two, I haven't looked it up. Just hectic, and I missed it on the homework. I just didn't look it up. I know the story by heart, and that's why I guess I overlooked it and trying to give you Bible verses. But it is Corinthians. It's the Last Supper. I think it's around chapter 11. But you'll have to glance over and just kind of find the Last Supper. If you run across this do in remembrance of me, that's the Last Supper passages. And you'll just, find right in there, and that'll be the Last Supper. It's the Last Supper in a painting would be Da Vinci's Last Supper. That would be the Last Supper we're talking about. Okay. But there's a argument on what exactly happened and why an innocent man ended up on the cross. But one of Jesus' disciples, after the Last Supper, Jesus told them that one of them was going to betray him, and one of them did. And one of them betrayed him, and he got hung on a cross for it. But it's very particular on how you diagnose the Last Supper and the crucifixion conversation. It's going to be a conversation at a point. I mean, you don't want to throw condemnation like it's the big power number one. Condemnation's not the big power number one. Death is not the ultimate judgment. It's not. It's my opinion, but, it's called the Book of Life, not the Book of Holy Damnation. Okay, so the Last Supper, there's a problem. Conversation's kind of hectic, and don't know exactly what's going on there, but for some reason, Judas betrayed Christ. Okay, Last Supper. All right. We're still in the New Testament. We're going to kind of glance over some Revelations passages, and we're just going to jump to the big one. 3 6s, the mark of the beast. That number is man, and for those with wisdom, figure the number of the beast. And that number is man. It's the big one. 3 6s. Okay. So, I'm not going to tell you where the crucifixion is, but it's in the New Testament. Okay. I just told you where it was. It's in the New Testament. The story of the crucifixion is in the New Testament. But the main part we want to get from this little sermon, non-authorized, forbidden knowledge sermon, because I don't have a degree. But the main point we want to get is from a passage from the crucifixion. I don't have it written down here. You need to do your homework. But, find the crucifixion. It'll be after the Last Supper. It'll be after the Last Supper, but before Revelations. Okay? Alright, it's not much help, but it's a little help. But we're going to jump from the mark of the beast. Okay, we're going to try to figure. Okay, we're going to try to figure. Figure what the most, hostile thing Jesus wanted us to fight. And we're just going to have to go to the crucifixion, to what Jesus said on the cross. Okay, what was his last words that he really wanted to tell us? Okay, because, obviously it's just ignorance. We can't figure 666 and find out what the meaning of the beast and all. It's ignorant. I can't, you just don't know. So we're going to jump back to the crucifixion and find out what Jesus' last words were. Okay, well, his technical last words were, "It is finished." Well, that didn't help us because it's already over. Okay, so we'll go back a little bit further, and it's, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." It's just forgive them because they're so ignorant. They just don't know what they're doing. Just forgive them and just forget about it. They just, just forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. It's not their fault. That was what you wanted to get. It's ignorance. So we're right again. It's the number of the beast is ignorance. Okay, it's going to be put on your right hand or your forehead. Your correct hand or your forehead. Your brain. Now don't let them put it on. Don't let them label you ignorant. Don't let them label you ignorant. You are ignorant a little bit because obviously we're not as smart as God. We don't know everything as much as God does. We can guess, we can speculate, but we're not going to really achieve that semi-phenomenal cosmic power. We're man. That's only a little type of God. It's only a little type of God. We're God's children. Now, Jesus is God's only begotten biological son. Besides Adam and Eve, who were, God's children. He made them. It's the same thing. But, Jesus was he was his biological son twice. Well, because Adam and Eve were Jesus' children. And, kind of in an angel state at first, and then molested, and, because the information just was an overload. And, where are my clothes? But we're getting off topic. Okay, the number of the beast, is 666. Okay, how can we get any information out of that? Well, it says to figure it, so I'm just going to add it up. 6 plus 6 plus 6 is 18. Well, that equals the age of accountability in my country. The age of accountability in my country is 18 and 21. And there's another one that's 35. But we came up with 18, which is the first age of accountability that's legal, besides 16, which is under, but 16 just has to deal with BB guns and driver's license. But, the age of accountability is a wave at this point. There's little punctuations all in it, but we only got 18 out of 666. The odds of us, nailing the age of accountability with the number of the beast are slim. Because 666, what would be the next one up from 666? Okay, well, we got 18 from 666. And the next one up would be 21, would be 3 sevens. 777. So we're hitting the age of accountability. So it's the accountability's fault. No, we're jumping into fear here. Fear of being wrong, fear of accountability, fear of judgment, fear of ignorance, fear of we're getting beat up for fear we're not finding out if 666 is ignorance. We'd have to go back to the crucifixion and listen to that passage one more time where it says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Okay, so that's the big message Jesus wanted to fight. That is ignorance. And trying to put a number on the age of accountability is ignorance. So the mark of the beast would be ignorance. Now, don't put that on everybody, because not everybody's ignorant there's going to be different levels of ignorance, but not everybody's going to be ignorant. Okay, they're just not. We know what a spoon is. We do. We know what a spoon is. Because it also says those that don't take the mark of the beast, forced, will live with Jesus for 1,000 years. Because we know what a spoon is. So there's a possibility we could get to the correct information just because we know what a spoon is. This is actually just tobacco. I do have my medical cannabis card, but I'm kind of out of cannabis right now. And I'm out of cigarettes, so I'm rolling my own cigarettes. I gotta have a little medicine. Prayer does work, and it works well. I just gotta have a little medicine. It's just a biological thing. Prayer works, and it works well. You can't replace prayer with cigarettes. You just can't. But sometimes you need a cigarette. I can't explain it any more than that. Because, if you don't know there's a difference between a cigarette and a real prayer, well, you might need to pray more and smoke less. But if you pray in private, that's your business, and you should. But if you pray in private and you need a cigarette for your prayer time, I recommend it. If that's your prayer time, you take your cigarette break. A lot of us pray in private because we don't want our prayers messed with. A lot of people will mess with your stuff. Just hate and throw stuff in there, just tear up your organization just because they want to. So we choose to pray in private. We don't get down on our knees and go, ah, la, la, la. Sorry, I'm not trying to make fun. They're good people. Because it's wise that they're doing those things. But I have to do it my way because, ignorance. Ignorance. I'm ignorant at a point, and I do believe a lot of the public is ignorant to things. They might know and get the points of different stuff, but they haven't made a choice. They haven't made a judgment. They haven't done things the way that I have. So I think there's a lot of ignorance in between the conversation of me and the general populace. But ignorance isn't what I want you to get out of this message. I don't want you to just plop an ignorant stamp on you and say, that's the end of it. Don't do that. We want you to remember John 1:1. God is the Word. John 3:16. Because Jesus is trying to give you something. Well, forgiveness. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. John 3:16. You won't find the crucifixion passage, but you'll find God's question for you. And that's what John 3:16 is. It's God's question for you. And it's about the passage. And Corinthians, the Last Supper, and then the crucifixion. The overall question to the world. It was made for, a statement to God. Because it was the last time. Jesus expected, he was on a cross. He'd done been nailed. He didn't know what God was going to do to save him, but he knew God was going to save him somehow. But if he couldn't, well, he just wanted him to forgive him anyway. Because it wasn't their fault. It wasn't really their fault. It was just I ain't trying to label everybody with that. I mean, because it says not to. Because we don't want, that's not the point of anything. It's like condemnation. We're not trying to condemn people with ignorance. We're trying to go the other way if they have it. Ignorance is something to get rid of, and we're all born with it. We're all born with ignorance. But it's something to come out of. We learn and we adjust. But how many times should you forgive somebody? Well, Peter said, well, we should forgive them 7 times. And then Jesus comes back and says 7 times 70. 70 times 7. I mean, it's 490, but you're not going to sit there and count each time, oh, it's 483 times so far. You're not going to do that. What you're going to do is arbitrary. It's arbitrary. You forgive them as many times as you physically can possibly forgive them without condemning yourself. Just don't kill yourself, but try to forgive them anyway. It's arbitrary. That's the, overall we want to get from, Peter and Jesus' conversation about forgiveness. How many times should we forgive? It's arbitrary. As many times as you can possibly forgive. 70 times 7. I mean, just as many as possible. Peter, from what I understand from a preacher and passage I just read, passage I just read, that was 7 times, was twice as many as the rabbi would recommend you forgive somebody. 3 times is what the rabbis would recommend. So Peter thought he was wise in doubling it. And then Jesus come back and said 70 times 7. 70 times 7. And just empowering the fact that we should forgive. That should be a thing that just, it should happen. We don't always do that. A lot of times it's condemnation we get. But Jesus didn't come into the world to condemn the world. He came in to save it. He saved it with forgiveness. Now we don't have to kill people for a candy bar. Now we don't have to kill people for fishing in using the wrong bait. We don't have to kill people for that stuff. I mean, literally, we don't always have to kill people that accidentally kill people, because we're not supposed to. But forgiveness is what we want. And if you're really looking for forgiveness today and can kind of search the meanings of stuff carefully and accurately, and you can really make an informed judgment on John 3:16, I would recommend just asking God for forgiveness and accepting the moment of silence as, his yes answer. Because a lot of people don't get a moment of silence. God's not necessarily going to answer every prayer, and some people don't get an answered prayer from God their whole life. All they do is ask for forgiveness and keep going on about their business, trying to be the best person they can be. Now you're going to have to make those adjustments on actually trying to be the best person you can be. I mean, that's where we learn from forgiveness. I mean, forgiveness has been on this planet for over 2,022 years. So we should really be learning from forgiveness by now. And I'm sorry about bragging on the other video. And I just really hope you search the book a little more if you can't make the decision on John 3:16 yet. And if you can, just hold it close to your heart. And if you're worried about the infinite, and you have to look away sometimes, it's going to be fine. It just gets too strong for you sometimes. But basically, if you want a representation of the infinite, I'll give you two. For one, you have skin cells and other cells in your body. Can you count all of them? Or they keep coming and you got new ones all the time? Can you count those? No, not necessarily. You can look and see if somebody's healthy, and they look pretty healthy, but you can't always tell by that. So, I mean, we can't count each and every cell, but we try our best to estimate it, and it is kind of an infinite structure, because we can't count it. We can't. We can estimate it. Estimates are good. They get us pretty close. And if you want another example of the infinite, I'm just gonna start counting, okay? And we always count in the now, and that's an infinite structure of an infinite structure. Okay, we're gonna go 1, that's an infinite structure. 2, that's an infinite structure. 3, that's an infinite structure. 4, that's an infinite structure. 5, that's an infinite structure. And we're going to continue and continue and continue, because each one in between 0 and 2 is technically an infinite structure. I mean, it's only one though. I mean, you're technically right, but we have from 0 to 2 that is that 1. So 1 is an infinite structure unto itself. 2 is also an infinite structure, but if you add 1 and 2, you've got 2 infinite structures that make 1 infinite structure, and we got a bigger infinite structure, and we can go to 3, and that's even bigger. And we're just counting the now and moving on, and it keeps growing. Infinite's big. It's real big. But God wasn't bluffing when he said we can have an eternal life, an everlasting life. He wasn't bluffing. Oh. Excuse me for being rude. I'm sorry for my attitudes on previous videos. And I hope y'all have a good Sunday. Have a good day. Bye.